In 1991, Flight 13 took off from Boston with 113 passengers on board and was never seen again. No wreckage, no black box, no survivors. But in 2023, a radar anomaly revealed the impossible. Flight 13 was still airborne, circling above restricted airspace with no response from the cockpit. This story is based on chilling real-life accounts and unexplained aviation reports. Subscribe to The Last Knock before you board this terrifying journey.
It began, as many modern mysteries do, with a single image. The photograph was grainy, taken at dusk, and showed something that shouldn't have been there. It first appeared on a niche aviation forum, where pilots and engineers traded technical data and rumors. The image depicted the silhouette of a passenger jet against the fading Arizona light. But this was no ordinary plane. Its shape was dated, a model rarely seen anymore. There was an unnatural stillness to it, as if it hung in the sky, silent and suspended. The forum erupted in debate. Some called it a fake, others pointed to authentic details, the way the light caught the wingtip, the angle of the fuselage. The original poster, anonymous and never seen again, captioned it, "Seen over the Sonoran Desert. It makes no sound." That simple statement turned the photo into legend. The image spread, migrating from dark web forums to mainstream social media, losing context but none of its eerie power. Was it a secret military craft, a drone, or something else entirely? The photograph became a digital ghost story. For most, it was a fleeting oddity. But for a select few, pilots and controllers in Arizona, it was chilling confirmation of long-whispered rumors. The photo gave a face to years of hangar gossip about a phantom blip on radar, an unexplained presence in the sky. Now, they had something to point to. Not proof, but validation. It suggested the strange blips weren't just glitches. It was real. And it was out there, flying silently through the twilight. The legend of Flight 13 had begun. The photograph became a puzzle with no solution, a single frame from a film no one could finish. For those who watched the skies, it was a warning. Some mysteries refused to stay hidden, and this one had just taken flight. Long before the photograph, the story of the ghost flight was written on radar screens. Only a handful of military air traffic controllers at a remote Arizona base knew the secret. Their job was to monitor a vast, empty stretch of desert airspace, usually a monotonous task. But starting in the early 2000s, a new blip began to appear. Always in the same place, behaving like nothing they'd seen before. The blip would materialize out of thin air, no approach, no entry, just there. They'd try to hail it. "Unidentified aircraft, you are in restricted airspace." Silence. The blip moved like a commercial jet, but broadcast no transponder, no ID. It was a ghost. This wasn't a one-off. Several times a month, the phantom blip appeared, always in the late afternoon. The controllers started to anticipate its arrival, a strange ritual in their otherwise predictable shifts. They called it Flight 13. The blip always followed the same path, then vanished as suddenly as it appeared. The event lasted exactly 13 minutes every single time. The controllers watched, holding their breath as the blip moved across their screens. Then, without warning, it was gone. The screen was empty again. The phenomenon became base folklore, a spooky tale for new controllers, until they saw it themselves. Official reports called it unresolved radar phenomena, a technical term that sidestepped the strangeness. But those who saw it knew better. It was real, and it was out there. The legend grew one unexplained blip at a time, and Flight 13 became the base's most persistent mystery. The 13-minute duration was the most perplexing part. In aviation, everything is predictable. Planes don't just vanish. But Flight 13 did. It appeared on radar, moving at a consistent speed and altitude, like a jet on final approach. But there was no airport, just miles of empty desert. Controllers became obsessed with the number 13 minutes every time. They timed it to the second 780 seconds, no variation. This ruled out natural phenomena or equipment glitches. It was methodical, a replay stuck on a loop. Over the years, they kept an unofficial log, dates, times, weather, no pattern. The only constants: location, path, duration. The phenomenon became institutional folklore, a rite of passage for new controllers. Most dismissed it, until they saw it themselves. Officially, it was a glitch. Unofficially, it was something else. Those who saw the blip felt its deliberate, silent progress. It was like a memory, a 13-minute echo of a flight that never landed. The anomaly refused to be explained, It was a fixed point in a world of variables, and it haunted everyone who watched it appear and disappear. Flight 13 was more than a blip. It was a question with no answer. The story of Flight 13 leaked beyond the base, spreading through aviation circles. It reached David Hastings, a private pilot and former Air Force mechanic. Hastings was a pragmatist, not prone to wild stories. At first, he was skeptical. Sure, it was a misidentified drone or classified test, but the details were too specific. The 13-minute window, the precise location, the silence. Hastings started asking questions, talking to friends on the base and other pilots. Most laughed it off, but a few admitted to seeing strange blips or glimpses in the sky. The story was an open secret. Hastings decided to see for himself. He planned his flight meticulously, studying charts and calculating fuel. He would fly his Cessna into the zone at the time Flight 13 was said to appear. He wasn't looking for ghosts. He wanted an explanation. He expected a drone, a weather balloon, or a trick of the light. He was convinced there was a logical answer. He had no idea what he was about to find. On a clear October afternoon, Hastings took off from Tucson. He flew for nearly an hour, heading toward the coordinates. The sky was empty, the desert below silent. Circling the zone, he watched the horizon. Then he saw it. A full-sized passenger jet appearing out of the hazy sky. It was exactly where the stories said it would be, flying low and steady. The plane was an older model, pristine and undamaged, its silver fuselage gleaming. Hastings banked his Cessna, trying to get closer. The strangest thing was the silence. No engine roar, just the hum of his own propeller. The jet moved with eerie grace, a silent giant gliding through twilight. Hastings grabbed his binoculars, focusing on the windows. They were completely black, like empty eyes. A profound sense of wrongness washed over him. The plane felt like a perfect replica, but soulless. It flew with impossible smoothness, unaffected by the air. Hastings felt a chill. He was witnessing something that broke the rules of flight. The stories were real, and he was now part of them. Hastings shadowed the mysterious jet, his training compelling him to observe. Its altitude, speed, and heading matched a landing approach, but there was no runway for miles. The jet flew toward barren desert, calm and purposeful. As he closed the distance, he saw the livery and airline that had vanished decades ago. The plane looked brand new, a ghost from another time. The blacked-out windows were the most disturbing. Opaque, lifeless, no hint of a cabin. It was a hollow imitation, a shell. Hastings felt like an intruder, witnessing a ritual not meant for the living. The silence was absolute, broken only by his own engine. He followed the jet for minutes that felt like eternity. The sun set, the desert bathed in purple twilight. The jet continued its descent, unwavering, dangerously low. Hastings knew he couldn't follow further. He watched as the silent shape vanished below the horizon. It didn't crash or explode, it simply disappeared. The sky was empty once more. Shaken, Hastings turned for home, mind racing. 13 minutes had passed since he first saw the plane. Then his radio crackled, static, then a faint, distant voice. He turned up the volume, heart pounding. Through the noise he heard, "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday, this is Flight 13. We have a situation. We have lost all power." Another burst of static. Hastings' blood ran cold. Flight 13, the name from the radar blip. He grabbed his mic. "Unidentified station, this is Cessna November 771 Charlie. I read you. What is your position?" No reply, just static. Then the voice returned, calm and routine. "Phoenix Tower, this is Flight 13 requesting clearance to land." The phrase repeated, over and over, like a recording stuck on a loop. Each repetition was identical, chilling in its calmness. Hastings sat in his cockpit, listening to a ghost asking for permission to land. The transmission faded, leaving only silence. He stared into the darkness, haunted by what he'd heard. The legend was no longer just a story. It was real. And he was its witness. The desert night closed in, and the mystery deepened. Flight 13 was out there, still calling for clearance, and no one was answering. When Hastings landed, he was changed. He filed a detailed report with the FAA, describing everything he'd seen and heard. The official response was swift and dismissive. No other aircraft, no transmissions, nothing on radar. They suggested fatigue, tricks of light, or stray radio signals. His account was reduced to pilot error. Hastings refused to accept this. He began sharing his story, seeking answers. The more he spoke, the more he was ostracized. The FAA reviewed his license, friends distanced themselves, but whispers grew. Other pilots anonymously shared their own sightings. A flight attendant reported seeing an unlit jet pass silently beneath them. Officially, nothing was there. Unofficially, the legend of Flight 13 was impossible to ignore. Hastings paid a high price for his curiosity. He lost friends, his reputation, and eventually, his life. A year after his flight, a fire destroyed his plane and took his life. The official report called it an accident, fuel leak, electrical fault. But for those who followed his story, the explanation felt too convenient. The man who got too close to the secret was gone. Was it an accident, or a way to keep the mystery unsolved? His death became the final chapter in the legend. Today, the skies over the Sonoran Desert remain quiet. The FAA insists there's no evidence of anomalies, but pilots still whisper about the silent jet with blacked-out windows. Controllers still see a blip that appears, flies for 13 minutes and vanishes. Flight 13 remains a chilling reminder.
It all began, as many strange tales do, in a place of transit, a hub of comings and goings where secrets can easily be lost in the shuffle. A place where the ordinary brushes shoulders with the extraordinary and where the mundane can suddenly take a turn into the bizarre, not with a bang, a cataclysmic event that shakes the world, but with a whisper, a hushed tone, a fleeting comment, something easily dismissed, yet impossible to ignore once heard, a secret passed from one person to another, a seed of doubt planted in fertile ground. Arthur Finch, a man of routine, a cog in the machine, a long-time employee, someone who knew the airport like the back of his hand, its hidden corners and forgotten stories. He was a man of quiet dedication, someone who took pride in his work, however unremarkable it may have seemed. At Boston's Logan Airport, a place teeming with life, dreams taking flight and secrets buried deep within its walls, a place where the past and the present constantly collide, where history echoes in the footsteps of travelers. Carried a secret, a burden he bore in silence, a truth that gnawed at him from the inside, a secret that threatened to unravel the carefully constructed reality he had come to accept. For decades, a weight on his shoulders, a constant reminder of something amiss. The years passed, but the secret remained, growing heavier with each passing day. In the mid-90s, a time of dial-up internet and burgeoning technology, while archiving, sifting through the remnants of the past, old flight records, the mundane details of countless journeys, he found a binder, tucked away in a forgotten corner, labeled Flight 13, Final. A seemingly innocuous title, yet one that held the key to a long-hidden mystery. Inside were nestled amongst routine paperwork 2 passenger manifests, 2 lists of names, each representing a life, a story, a journey cut short. The official list, the one presented to the world, the accepted truth, and a preliminary version, a draft, a glimpse behind the curtain, with subtle but crucial differences, discrepancies that hinted at something more sinister. Finch felt a chill, a prickling unease that ran down his spine as he compared the names, each one a potential victim. A piece of a puzzle he couldn't quite solve, something was off, a nagging feeling that wouldn't let him go. A sense that he had stumbled upon something he shouldn't have. He kept this secret buried deep within his heart for years, the weight of it growing heavier with each passing season, fearing ridicule, the scorn of his colleagues, the dismissal of his concerns, and the loss, the potential consequence of speaking out of his job, his livelihood, his place in the world. But the faces, the images of those who had been on that flight, from those lists, both official and preliminary, haunted him. Their silent pleas echoing in his mind, appearing in crowds, fleeting glimpses of recognition in the faces of strangers, and dreams, nightmarish visions of what might have been, of what could have been prevented. After retiring free from the constraints of his job, Finch finally spoke out, the dam finally breaking after years of pent-up anxiety, handing photocopies, fragile pieces of evidence of the manifests, the key to unlocking the truth, to a small-time journalist, someone willing to listen, someone desperate for a story. He wanted no fame, no recognition for his actions, just the truth, the unvarnished reality to surface, to be acknowledged, to finally bring closure to those affected. The leak was quiet, a whisper in the digital wind, buried in an online forum, a forgotten corner of the internet for unsolved mysteries, a haven for conspiracy theorists and amateur sleuths. At first, unnoticed and unheeded, it was just a ripple, a minor disturbance in the vast ocean of information. No headlines, no sensational coverage, no media storm, just a quiet murmur in the background. But for the families, the loved ones left behind, for Flight 13, those who had carried the burden of grief for so long, it was a seismic shock. A tremor that shook the very foundations of their lives. The foundation, the carefully constructed narrative they had built to cope with their loss, of their grief, the way they had learned to live with the pain, began to crack, revealing the raw, unhealed wounds beneath. Finch's two lists, the discrepancies between them, reopened a case, a wound that had never truly healed, the world thought, or perhaps wanted to believe, was closed. A chapter relegated to the history books, the whisper, the faint echo of a forgotten truth from Logan Airport, the place where it all began, became the first echo, the initial reverberation of a secret long suppressed, of a much larger mystery, a conspiracy that reached far beyond the confines of that single flight. Soon that echo, that faint signal in the noise, would grow, amplified by the relentless pursuit of truth, into a roar, a deafening chorus of voices demanding answers, of questions, doubts and accusations. The story of Flight 13, once a forgotten tragedy, could no longer be just a footnote, a minor detail in the grand scheme of things. It was the start, the catalyst of a journey, a descent into the unknown. A labyrinth of secrets and lies, where the truth may be more terrifying than the mystery itself. The journalist who received, quite unexpectedly, Finch's documents began a meticulous process, a deep dive into the details that would soon challenge everything they thought they knew. The contents of that manila envelope held the key to unlocking a mystery far more complex than anyone could have imagined. Verifying the manifests, a task that initially seemed routine. At first, Flight 13's list, under initial scrutiny, looked ordinary, a standard compilation of names and details, names neatly typed and seemingly unremarkable, ages corresponding to the individuals listed, seat numbers, all in their designated places. But as the team, with growing suspicion, cross-referenced the names, meticulously comparing them against other sources, with public records, sifting through countless databases and archives, the story unraveled, revealing a truth far stranger than fiction. Several passengers, officially declared dead in the aftermath, appeared to have lived on, defying all logic and expectation. For years after the tragic event, the flight vanished, leaving behind only unanswered questions. Social security numbers remained active, a clear indication of ongoing activity. Pensions were drawn, benefits claimed, and financial transactions recorded. Some names appeared on voter rolls, participating in civic duties years later, as if nothing had ever happened. Investigators focused on, with renewed intensity, unique names, those that stood out from the rest, double-checking every detail, leaving no stone unturned in their pursuit of the truth. The anomalies persisted, a constant reminder that something was deeply amiss. At least 9 passengers, a significant number that couldn't be ignored, had credible evidence, undeniable proof of life after the crash, a reality that defied explanation. This wasn't a clerical error. It was far too widespread and consistent. It was a pattern, a deliberate and calculated arrangement. The list transformed, shifting from a simple record, from a record of tragedy, a somber memorial to those lost, into a riddle, a complex and perplexing enigma. How could these people, seemingly victims of a terrible accident, be officially dead, their lives supposedly extinguished, yet alive in public records? A blatant contradiction that defied explanation. The evidence was irrefutable, concrete and undeniable, yet impossible, a paradox that challenged the very foundations of reality. Each discovery tore, ripping apart the accepted narrative at the fabric of reality, leaving behind a sense of unease and disbelief. The case was, after years of dormancy, no longer closed, thrust back into the spotlight with renewed urgency. The manifest had become more than just a list of names, a doorway to, a portal into, a profound and disturbing mystery, one that threatened to unravel everything. The world's simplest tragedy, a seemingly straightforward accident, was now its, against all odds, most confounding puzzle, a mystery that defied all attempts at resolution. Flight 13's story, a tale of loss and unanswered questions, was just beginning, its secrets waiting to be uncovered. Among the numerous anomalies that surfaced during the investigation, certain cases stood out, demanding closer scrutiny. Eleanor Vance's case in particular stood out as especially perplexing. Listed officially as a victim of the crash, her family mourned her loss deeply and eventually, with heavy hearts, moved on with their lives. But here's where the story takes a bizarre turn. Her social security number, a seemingly insignificant detail, was actively used in Arizona, thousands of miles away, for years and years after the tragic crash that supposedly claimed her life. Property records, meticulously maintained and publicly accessible, showed that Eleanor Vance, the very same woman presumed dead, bought a house, a tangible piece of the American dream, in the tranquil retirement community of Sun City, Arizona, a mere year after she was officially declared to have died in that devastating plane crash. Neighbors who lived near her remembered her distinctly, describing her as a quiet, private woman who kept to herself, a seemingly ordinary resident who had mentioned she was originally from the East Coast, specifically Vermont. She eventually died of a heart attack, a natural cause, in 1999, bringing a quiet end to her life in Arizona. And her local death certificate, issued in Arizona, meticulously matched the identity of the Eleanor Vance, who had once lived in Vermont. Driven by curiosity and a thirst for the truth, a journalist obtained a photograph, a seemingly innocuous image, from a local gardening club newsletter in Sun City. And upon showing it to her family, they confirmed, without a doubt, it was indeed Eleanor, alive and well, years after her supposed demise. The revelation sent shockwaves through the investigation. It was a bombshell, suggesting that at least one passenger, against all odds, had somehow managed to survive the crash, or perhaps had never been on the plane at all in the crash. But the burning question remained: why would she fake her own death? And even more fundamentally, was she ever actually on the plane in the first place? Eleanor's quiet life, seemingly ordinary in the warm Arizona sun, cast a long and perplexing shadow, a shadow filled with unanswered questions over the entire investigation, demanding a deeper dive into the truth. The anomalies weren't just mere data glitches or simple clerical errors. They represented real people with families and histories, living real lives, or at least appearing to. The truth, as it began to unravel, was far more unsettling and far more complex than anyone could have initially imagined. The case of Eleanor Vance, with its layers of deception and mystery, ultimately proved that the mystery surrounding the crash was not just a theory, but a chilling reality. The case of Michael Tanner, age 7, was heartbreaking. Years after the crash, a missing children's alert in Oregon featured a teenager matching Michael's description and rare birthmark. He had no memory of his past, but DNA tests were initiated. Suddenly, a federal agency sealed the results and moved the boy to an undisclosed location. The family was left with only a photograph and impossible questions. Was it really Michael? Why the secrecy? The boy's face became another ghost haunting the mystery of Flight 13. As evidence mounted, families of Flight 13 demanded answers. Authorities stonewalled, dismissing the evidence as conspiracy theory. Freedom of information requests were denied or returned heavily redacted. The government's silence was absolute, fueling suspicion and anger. The agencies meant to provide answers only deepened the void. The official silence suggested there was something to hide. Then the families began receiving anonymous letters. Plain envelopes, no return address, postmarks smudged inside, cryptic clues, maps, technical manuals, pages from books about vanished flights. Only the families of the 9 survivors received them. The sender knew about the investigation and was watching. Police found nothing to trace. The letters turned homes into places of dread. Someone was pulling strings, ensuring the families would never find peace. The letters changed. Now, each contained a single, typewritten sentence: Flight 13 still flies. The phrase was sent to all 9 families, chilling and inexplicable. Was it code, metaphor, or something literal? The message pushed the mystery into the realm of the paranormal. The families were isolated, their story dismissed as delusion. The phrase became a weapon, confusing, discrediting, and terrifying. 5 words that deepened the psychological torment. With the phrase came photographs, blurry images from an airplane window. Each showed a wing against endless blue, no clouds, no land, just void. The photos were nearly identical, as if taken from the same seat. Experts were baffled. The images seemed old, but details were impossible to confirm. A faint smudge appeared on the wing in every photo. The photos were a visual echo of the mystery, a glimpse into a void offering no answers. For the families, they were torment, proof of nothing but a haunting reminder with their loved ones behind that window, staring out at an endless horizon. The images became the final chilling piece of the puzzle. Flight 13's journey seemed to have no end. Today, Flight 13 remains unresolved, suspended in uncertainty. Officially, it was lost at sea, case closed. But the evidence, Finch's manifest, Eleanor's survival, Michael's reappearance, cannot be dismissed. Some believe the flight was a cover for a mass disappearance, a government operation. Others see the clues as evidence of something stranger, a temporal loop, an experiment gone wrong. The phrase, Flight 13 still flies, haunts every theory. We are left with fragments, a leaked list, a few survivors, a wall of silence, and anonymous torment. The truth is a ghost, visible in glimpses, impossible to grasp. Flight 13 is a modern myth, a chilling reminder that some mysteries remain unsolved. We are left questioning reality itself, wondering what truths are hidden behind closed cases and official reports. It began as an ordinary day, July 27th, 2024. The air was crisp, the sky a brilliant blue, and the promise of summer hung heavy in the air. The sun was shining, and at a bustling airport, passengers boarded Flight 13, their hearts filled with anticipation for the journey ahead, bound for a sunny getaway, a much-needed escape from the everyday grind. Families, couples, and solo travelers alike streamed onto the aircraft, eager to reach their destination. The plane was a modern marvel, a testament to human engineering and technological advancement, indistinguishable from thousands of others crossing the globe, silently connecting distant corners of the world. A symbol of progress, freedom, and the boundless possibilities of air travel. No one suspected this flight would become one of the greatest mysteries of our time, a puzzle that would baffle experts and ignite countless theories. Takeoff was flawless. The powerful engines roared to life, propelling the aircraft down the runway with increasing speed. The crew was experienced, seasoned professionals who had navigated countless flights. The aircraft in perfect condition, meticulously maintained and ready for the journey. For hours, everything was routine. The flight attendants served drinks and snacks, passengers watched movies or read books, and the pilots maintained a steady course. Controllers tracked its progress, their eyes glued to radar screens, ensuring the safe passage of Flight 13 through the vast expanse of the sky, exchanging standard messages with the cockpit, confirming altitude, speed, and heading. Just another ordinary flight on an ordinary day. Then, without warning, Flight 13 vanished from radar. The blip representing the aircraft simply disappeared, leaving a void on the screen and a chilling silence in the control room. One moment it was a blip on the map, a tiny symbol representing hundreds of lives soaring through the sky. The next, it was gone, erased from existence as if it had never been there at all. In the control tower, confusion turned to panic. Controllers frantically checked their equipment, desperately trying to re-establish contact. Calls to the plane went unanswered. Only static replied, a deafening silence that amplified the growing sense of dread. Search and rescue teams scoured the ocean at the last known position, racing against time to find any sign of the missing aircraft. No wreckage, no oil, nothing. The vast expanse of the ocean offered no clues, no answers, only an unsettling emptiness. It was as if the plane had ceased to exist, swallowed by the sea or transported to another dimension. Unlike other aviation mysteries, there was no distress call, no desperate plea for help from the pilots or crew, no debris floating on the surface to indicate a crash, no black box signal, no faint ping to guide rescuers to the flight recorder. The total absence of evidence defied logic, challenging everything investigators thought they knew about air disasters. The world debated theories, from the plausible to the outlandish. Mechanical failure, a catastrophic engine malfunction that led to a rapid descent. Storm, an unexpected encounter with a violent storm system that tore the plane apart. Sabotage, a deliberate act of destruction carried out by someone with malicious intent, but none fit. Each theory had its flaws, its inconsistencies, leaving investigators with more questions than answers. The story dominated headlines, capturing the world's attention and sparking widespread speculation, then faded, unsolved, into the annals of aviation history, a chilling reminder of the mysteries that lie beyond our understanding. But behind the scenes, a different story was unfolding, a clandestine investigation, shrouded in secrecy and fueled by suspicion. One the public was never meant to hear, a truth so unsettling that it threatened to unravel the very fabric of reality. The disappearance wasn't just a tragedy, it was a catalyst, a trigger that set in motion a chain of events with far-reaching consequences. It was the start of something far stranger, something that defied explanation and challenged the boundaries of human comprehension. The silence in that sky was only the beginning, a prelude to a series of events that would shake the world to its core. What really happened to Flight 13 would challenge everything we thought we knew about reality, forcing us to confront the possibility that there are forces beyond our understanding at play. The world moved on, slowly forgetting the names and faces of those who were lost. But the mystery lingered, haunting those who knew the truth, those who couldn't let go of the unanswered questions. The official search ended, the resources were withdrawn, and the hope of finding survivors dwindled. But the real investigation had just begun, a desperate search for answers that would lead down a rabbit hole of conspiracy and intrigue. The families waited for answers that never came, their grief compounded by the uncertainty and the lack of closure. The authorities closed the case, marking it as an unsolved mystery, a tragic loss with no explanation. But whispers persisted, rumors circulated, and conspiracy theories thrived in the absence of concrete evidence. Some believed the plane was lost forever, a victim of the unforgiving forces of nature. Others weren't so sure, convinced that something far more sinister was at play. The day the sky went silent was the day the impossible became real, the day the world was forced to confront the limits of its knowledge. And the story of Flight 13 was far from over, its secrets buried deep within the shadows, waiting to be unearthed. What followed would reveal secrets more unsettling than anyone could imagine. Truths that would challenge the very foundations of our understanding. The sky had gone silent, a void where a plane once soared, a symbol of unanswered questions. But the echoes were just beginning, reverberating through the corridors of power and the minds of those who sought the truth. A year later, the landscape of the investigation shifted dramatically. Everything changed with the release of a single, heavily scrutinized, declassified document. Flight 13, it turned out, wasn't just another routine commercial flight as everyone believed. It wasn't just a commercial jet ferrying passengers across the country. The report revealed a truth far more complex and unsettling. It was, in reality, a highly advanced military prototype, cloaked in secrecy. Disguised meticulously as a civilian plane, it hid its true nature from the world. Beneath the familiar airline logo was a web of hidden technology, a reinforced airframe built to withstand forces far beyond those of a typical airliner, experimental avionics, pushing the boundaries of what was thought possible in flight control, and a power plant unlike anything ever seen in commercial aviation, a marvel of engineering. It was all part of a top-secret program shrouded in mystery and classified at the highest levels. Project Echo Loop, a name that would soon become synonymous with the impossible. Most passengers and crew, completely unaware, had no idea they were unwitting participants in a high-stakes experiment, a gamble with unimaginable consequences. This revelation fundamentally shifted the narrative, casting a long shadow over the entire investigation. From a tragic accident, it morphed into something deliberate, something sinister, hinting at a deeper conspiracy. Why would anyone use a military prototype with all its inherent risks for a seemingly ordinary commercial flight? The report hinted at a mission profile, a purpose far beyond the scope of routine travel, suggesting something extraordinary was at play. The disappearance was inextricably linked, the evidence suggested, to the very cutting-edge technology that made the plane so unique, so unlike anything else in the sky. Project Echo Loop wasn't just about designing and building a new aircraft. It was about pushing the boundaries of science, about breaking the seemingly unbreakable laws of time itself. For a year, we'd been focusing on the wrong details, asking the wrong questions, chasing shadows. The real mystery wasn't simply where Flight 13 went after it vanished from radar, but when it went. The disappearance marked not an end, but the beginning of a perilous journey into the unknown, a voyage into uncharted territory. The truth, as it began to emerge, was far stranger, far more unbelievable than any work of fiction. And the world was only just beginning to scratch the surface to understand the magnitude of what had really happened on that fateful flight, and the implications for the future. No. Project Echo Loop. The very name whispers of ambition and danger. It was an audacious endeavor aimed to achieve temporal displacement, manipulating time itself, bending the very fabric of reality. Not time travel as depicted in science fiction movies, with characters jumping through history, but rather creating a localized bubble, a pocket in space-time where time flowed at a different rate relative to the outside world. The goal? To allow near instantaneous travel across vast distances, shrinking the world in ways previously unimaginable. The military envisioned ultimate stealth, a strategic advantage unlike any other. Imagine a plane that could appear and disappear seemingly at will, a ghost in the skies, arriving at its destination before anyone even noticed its departure. Years of secret research, fueled by ambition and shrouded in secrecy, ultimately led to the creation of a single prototype, the N-139 EC. The loop in the project's name referred to the theoretical concept of folding space-time, creating a shortcut through the cosmos, a wormhole of sorts. But the echo part of the name, that warned of unpredictable and potentially catastrophic side effects. Early drone tests conducted in the dead of night produced bizarre and unsettling results. Machines vanishing from radar screens only to reappear moments later miles away with their internal clocks inexplicably out of sync with the rest of the world. These temporal echoes were seen as both a tantalizing promise of what could be achieved and a stark warning of the dangers that lay ahead. Flight 13, a seemingly ordinary commercial airliner, carried the most advanced but ultimately unstable time displacement drive ever conceived. The original plan was a controlled, meticulously planned, manned test flight. But a fateful, last-minute decision, driven by factors that remain classified to this day, put hundreds of unsuspecting civilians on board, irrevocably turning a high-stakes experiment into an unimaginable catastrophe. The underlying technology was completely unproven, pushed far beyond its theoretical limits, and the potential risks were largely unknown, lurking in the shadows of scientific hubris. The fate of Flight 13 was effectively sealed, its destiny predetermined long before it ever had a chance to leave the safety of the ground. The experiment, born of ambition and secrecy, was poised to go horribly, irrevocably wrong. And the devastating consequences of that fateful flight would be felt, rippling outwards, far, far beyond the confines of that lonely runway, echoing through time itself. The Echo Loop system required a fuel beyond anything conventional Ether X. Its composition remains classified, but it was described as dense, energetic, and dangerously unstable. Ether X wasn't just fuel, it was a catalyst, interacting with reality itself. The engine didn't burn it traditionally, it used it to create a resonance, decoupling the plane from normal time. No one fully understood Ether X. Its effects were unpredictable. Sometimes test drones returned with clocks wildly out of sync. Flight 13 was loaded with enough Ether X for a long-range test. The plan measured fuel consumption and field stability over open ocean, but no one anticipated the plane would be trapped in an endless present. The very fuel meant to save time became a prison. The experiment was a gamble with reality, and the stakes were higher than anyone realized. Flight 13 was flying into the unknown. Why were civilians on a top-secret test flight? A last-minute logistical failure forced the military to disguise the mission as a commercial charter. Only the pilots knew the truth. The rest were unwitting passengers. The decision was catastrophic. Hundreds of lives risked for convenience and secrecy. The passengers became collateral in an experiment they never agreed to. The gamble failed and the consequences were irreversible. Flight 13 was lost not by accident but by design. When Flight 13 vanished, the world assumed a crash, but the report revealed the truth. The pilots activated the Echo Loop system as planned. Instead of a controlled jump, a massive temporal event erupted. The plane was wrenched out of normal time, erased from our reality. There was no wreckage because there was no crash. The aircraft and everyone aboard were displaced, trapped in a self-sustaining bubble of time. The military knew immediately what had happened. While the world searched the ocean, Project Echo Loop went into crisis mode. They'd lost their prototype, their pilots, and hundreds of civilians. The cover-up began, and the official story of a mysterious disappearance was allowed to stand. The truth was buried, and the world moved on. But the anomaly remained, a hole in reality, impossible to close. Flight 13 was gone, but not destroyed. Secretly, the military tried everything to contact the lost plane. They used deep space arrays, quantum sensors, and every frequency imaginable. They called out to the pilots, hoping for any sign, but there was only silence. Some theorized time inside the bubble moved differently. Minutes for the crew, months for us. Every attempt failed. The plane was lost, unreachable. The project was shut down, the truth locked away. The world accepted the mystery, but Flight 13 wasn't finished yet. 5 months later, a radio station in Utah picked up a faint, looping transmission. It was the co-pilot of Flight 13. Flight 13, low fuel. We've been in the air for days. No one is responding. Everyone's asleep. The message repeated, a desperate call from the void. We've been in the air for days. Proof of temporal distortion. For those on board, hours had stretched into days. The phrase, everyone's asleep, was chilling. Were the passengers in suspended animation? The transmission lasted an hour, then vanished. Its origin was untraceable, as if bleeding through from another reality. It confirmed the plane was intact, the crew alive, but trapped. The message was a report from a prison, not a crash. The world had proof of the impossible, but there was nothing anyone could do. The echo faded, leaving only questions. 1 year later, the truth is out, but the mystery remains. Flight 13 wasn't lost in the ocean. It's trapped in a temporal limbo, a ghost plane flying through an endless day. The last transmission was a haunting echo from a place outside time. The military closed the case, the world moved on, but the families are left in limbo. Their loved ones are neither dead nor alive, simply gone. The story endures as a warning. Some forces should never be tampered with. Somewhere, Flight 13 may still be flying, its pilots awake, its passengers lost in sleep. It is the ultimate ghost story of our age. A monument to ambition gone too far. All we can do is look up and wonder. The sky is silent, but the echoes remain, and the mystery of Flight 13 will never truly fade.
This story is based on chilling real-life accounts and unexplained aviation reports. Subscribe to The Last Knock before you board this terrifying journey. It was April 2nd, 1991. The sun was shining, and at airports people said their goodbyes. On Oceanic Airlines Flight 13, 158 people boarded for a trip to a holiday island. There was a young couple on their honeymoon, a family with 2 children, a businessman, and a seasoned crew, all with plans for the future. The Boeing 777 was a modern, reliable aircraft, flown by experienced pilots. The weather was perfect, everything was normal, until it wasn't. That's what makes this story so chilling. There was no warning, no storm, no mechanical failure, just a clear blue sky, and then silence. Did the passengers sense anything? Was there a sudden jolt, or did it end in an instant? We may never know. Flight 13 became one of the most perplexing mysteries of our time. We can only try to piece together the puzzle, talk to those left behind, and explore the strange events that followed. Flight 13 is not just a missing plane, it's a search for truth that's lasted over 3 decades. This is the story of a flight that never landed, and a mystery that still haunts the sky. The families, the crew, the passengers, all vanished into a question mark. The truth is still out there, waiting to be found. And so the search begins. Flight 13 departed on time, engines roaring to life, climbing into a clear morning sky. Passengers settled in, some reading, some gazing out at the shrinking city, others dozing off. The flight was scheduled for 6 hours over the Pacific, an ordinary journey. For 2 hours, everything was routine. The pilots checked in with air traffic control, calm and professional. The plane was a steady blip on radar, following its path exactly. Passengers ate, watched movies, and drifted into the rhythm of flight. No one suspected anything was wrong. Then, at 10:41 a.m., the expected check-in never came. Controllers called, "Oceanic 13, do you read?" Only static replied. The blip on the radar vanished. No explosion, no distress call. Just gone. It was as if the plane had never existed. The silence was immediate and total. In the cabin, life continued for a few more moments, children restless, adults lost in thought. But above the Pacific, Flight 13 slipped into the unknown. The world below had no idea what had just happened. The ordinary flight had become a global mystery. The search for answers began with a single chilling fact: the plane had disappeared without a trace. The controllers stared at empty screens, unable to explain the vanishing. And so, the mystery deepened. When a plane vanishes from radar, panic ripples through the control center. Supervisors checked equipment, tried new frequencies, and contacted other planes. Nothing. Flight 13's last known position, a remote stretch of the Pacific, hundreds of miles from land. The plane had flown over 2 hours with no issues, exactly on course. No deviation, no distress call, no emergency code, just silence. Modern planes have backup systems, but none were used. The cockpit's silence is haunting. Whatever happened was sudden and total. Investigators were left with a digital ghost, a final electronic handshake with a satellite confirming the plane was intact and flying at the moment it vanished. No wreckage, no signal, just a point on a map and a vanished aircraft. The search teams had a location but no clues. It was as if someone had flipped a switch, erasing the plane and everyone on board. The ocean below held its secrets. The world was left with only questions. The disappearance defied logic and technology. The search would begin, but hope was already fading. The silence was absolute. In the days that followed, a massive search and rescue operation swept the Pacific. Ships and planes from multiple countries scoured thousands of square miles, searching for any sign of Flight 13. Sonar scanned the ocean floor, eyes scanned the waves. Nothing. Not a single piece of debris, no oil slick, no luggage, unprecedented. In most crashes, something is found. Here, the ocean offered no clues. The lack of evidence was deeply unsettling, fueling wild speculation. How could a massive jet vanish without a trace? Theories ranged from catastrophic failure to sabotage, but none explained the total absence of wreckage. The search area grew, hope faded, and the world watched in disbelief. News coverage showed maps, experts, and grieving families, but no answers. The official search was eventually scaled back, but the mystery only deepened. Flight 13 was not just an accident, it was an anomaly. The puzzle defied logic, and the questions kept coming. The families waited, desperate for closure. The world moved on, but the mystery remained. The disappearance became legend, a story with no ending. The search for truth was just beginning. The silence of the ocean was matched only by the silence of the authorities, and the questions refused to die. While search teams found nothing at sea, investigators on land hit a wall. At the Air Traffic Control Center, they requested audio and radar logs, standard procedure, but the records were gone. Hours after the disappearance, government agents arrived, confiscating tapes, hard drives, and written logs. They declared it a matter of national security and ordered silence. This was highly unusual for a civilian air disaster. Transparency vanished, replaced by secrecy. Why would national security be involved? What needed to be hidden? Air traffic controllers, fearing for their jobs, complied. The official investigation stalled, starved of crucial information. The secrecy fueled conspiracy theories and public suspicion. Was the government hiding something? The official story claimed no clues, but the actions said otherwise. If there was nothing to hide, why confiscate everything? The authorities weren't just investigating, they were actively covering up. The mystery was no longer just about a missing plane, but about why someone wanted it forgotten. The families and public demanded answers but got only silence. The investigation was paralyzed. The truth was locked away, deepening the enigma. The wall of silence became as impenetrable as the ocean itself, and the world was left to wonder. For the families, the years that followed were a special kind of torment. With no wreckage, no bodies, and no answers, they lived in limbo, unable to grieve, unable to move on. Every phone call, every news report brought a surge of hope or dread. They formed support groups, wrote letters, and pleaded for information, but met only silence. The official response never changed. No new information. Decades passed. Children grew up, parents grew old, anniversaries came and went. Some clung to hope, imagining the plane had landed somewhere. Others tried to accept the loss, but closure was impossible. The lack of answers was a wound that never healed. The world moved on, but for the families, it was always April 2nd, 1991. They never stopped searching for truth. Their resilience was remarkable, their pain unending. Then, in 2023, after 30 years, a crack appeared in the wall of silence. A single piece of evidence emerged, changing everything. The hope for answers was reignited. The mystery was about to take a new turn. The breakthrough came from David Chen, a retired radar technician. In failing health, he released a satellite photograph dated April 2nd, 1991, just hours after Flight 13 vanished. The image showed a large passenger jet, matching a Boeing 777 flying over the Nevada desert, not the Pacific. The plane was flanked by two sleek black military aircraft of unknown design. The location, a classified military zone known as Area 47. The photograph defied logic. A plane can't simply appear thousands of miles from its last known position. Experts confirmed the photo's authenticity. The media erupted and families were stunned. Could their loved ones have survived? The focus shifted. This was no longer a story of a crash, but of a plane taken. The presence of the escort aircraft suggested a controlled operation. Theories exploded. Was the plane forced to land? Was it carrying something valuable? The photograph raised more questions than it answered. For the first time in decades, there was a tangible clue. The mystery moved from the ocean to the desert. The world demanded answers about Area 47. The silence from authorities was deafening. The enigma deepened. Area 47, a place not found on public maps, deep in the Nevada desert shrouded in secrecy. It's a no-fly zone, guarded and protected, rumored to house the military's most secret projects. Some believe it's where technology not of this world is studied. The satellite photo placed Flight 13 directly over this forbidden zone. Suddenly, the government's actions in 1991 made sense. Confiscated records enforced silence. Was the plane deliberately diverted? Was it carrying something, or someone, the military wanted? The lack of wreckage suggested the plane landed, not crashed. But what happened to the 158 people on board? Was this a secret experiment, a test gone wrong, or something stranger? The presence of unknown escort aircraft pointed to a planned interception. The mystery was no longer about a lost plane, but about a cover-up. The families now faced a powerful, secretive adversary. The search for truth had entered the shadows. Decades later, Flight 13 remains one of the world's greatest unsolved mysteries. The 2023 photograph opened a new chapter, but the government refuses to comment. The wall of silence, though cracked, still stands. A plane vanishes, records are seized, and a photo shows it escorted into a secret base. The families deserve answers after 30 years of suffering. The story is a chilling reminder of how much remains hidden from us. The search for truth continues, driven by those who refuse to let the story die. Will we ever know what happened? Perhaps another whistleblower will emerge. Or perhaps the secret will remain buried in the Nevada desert. Flight 13 is a symbol of the unknown, a testament to the human need for answers. If a government can make a plane disappear, what else can they hide? The story is about the line between security and secrecy. The sky is vast and we see only what we're allowed to see. The mystery endures just beyond our view.